I'm Naomi Hoppel, and this is Vibrant Sunshine Behind the Scenes. Join me as I grow my organic cold-pressed juicery to the next level. As a lover of podcasts, I started this show because I noticed a significant gap in the voices of small business owners like me. So oftentimes, brick and mortar business owners are invisible. We exist behind the scenes, and our struggles and triumphs are uncelebrated and unseen. My hope is that this show will inspire other entrepreneurs as I document and share my own journey. Thanks for being here. I'm going to be honest, it's been a struggle to get a podcast recorded this week. In addition to some personal things going on in my life, really exciting things, by the way, like birthdays and gatherings, and we actually welcomed an au pair into our household this week. O'Hara comes from Brazil, and she'll be living with us for the next year, hopefully more. She's wonderful. Everything's great. But like any lifestyle change, it requires time and attention. And meanwhile, in our production kitchen, we have been really pushing our limits and doing more volume than we've ever done before. Last week, we actually did back-to-back production runs. And what that means is we typically only do one wholesale production run on a weekly basis. So that's a really high volume of juice, 2 days in a row. And in this case, we actually did 4 days of high volume production in a row. And that requires a lot of coordination and a lot of effort from the team as a whole. And in particular, our operations person, Barb, who is actually my mother. Barb is a scientist and she's a true asset to our team. She's been working with the juice company for about 4 years now. She took on this job as a final job before she retires. And during that time, we've launched our wholesale program and dealt with the pandemic and a lot of other surprises that have popped up here and there. So it's been great to have her on our team. She is such a hard worker. And this back-to-back run really did test her limits as well, because she's the one who does all the record keeping and the testing and the inventory to make sure that we have enough bottles, enough produce, etc. So while my team did a flawless job, we encountered a series of other issues during this high volume time that just cropped up out of nowhere. And in my experience as a business owner, this is typical. It's called Murphy's Law. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. It's an accepted universal law established by this guy, Murphy, who was an aerospace engineer who worked for the United States military and Air Force. And some people might consider Murphy's Law pessimistic, but I have a different take on it because it's basically disaster preparedness. And the fact is, if you don't assess all of your shortcomings, assess all of the holes in the plan, then something is liable to fall through. If there's a hole, when you fill the vessel to capacity, things will literally fall through the hole. You can say it's pessimistic, but on the other hand, in this case, the things that went wrong weren't life-shattering problems. They weren't business-shattering problems, and they were big inconveniences. For example, in the past week, we had a freezer go down. We had the refrigerated unit on our juice truck go down after 5 years of operating flawlessly. It ran out of refrigerant because of a loose fitting. We were just getting everything packed up after the production run to store overnight in the truck and plug it in. And we were super lucky to find out that the refrigerated unit wasn't working before we walked away from it for the night. And of all things, the front basement in our building flooded. We think it's due to all the construction that's been going on in our neighborhood, but we ended up losing a great deal of inventory, merchandise that we store in the basement. So on top of all of us being at our capacity with work, there were all these additional issues to deal with. But the fact is that we did fix them and we did identify them. And I feel like when these things happen, it just makes us more wary and more prepared to make sure we're on our toes in case this were to happen again. For example, in the new space we're about to move into, we're going to have 500 square feet of walk-in cooler space. And if one of those units went down, it would be a big deal. So now we're looking into temperature monitoring capabilities and ways that we can have an alert if something were to go down when we're not in the store. And like I said, we were actually pretty lucky that we were able to identify these issues before they affected our product that was being stored, other than the basement, of course. That was a big loss and a really disappointing one. So the reason why this back-to-back production has been so tricky is because we're so tight on space right now. There really just isn't enough room to prep bottles and organize ourselves properly so that we can really make the most of the time that we have. And when we move into our new kitchen in Aspinwall, these problems will be largely eliminated because we are taking all this into account as we build out our juice production kitchen. Meanwhile, this week in Aspinwall, we've had another issue which has finally been resolved. The bank that we're working with is amazing. I've had a really good experience with them. However, there is one caveat, and it is that our mortgage included construction funds that have not yet been released to us. And the construction funds, to my understanding, were to be released as needed to get the job done. Well, I'll tell you, our first release was just last week, and it was only for the work that's already been done. So the demo work, and they were able to release a down payment for the plumbing and a couple other things. But if you've ever done a construction project, you probably understand that most contractors won't even lift a finger until they're paid. So it creates a really interesting problem when you are on a time crunch and you need to get everything done, but your money that's been promised to you is being held up by people who won't pay you until the work is done, and yet the workers won't work until they know that you're going to pay them. And really, this is a problem in the construction industry in general because there are bad contractors. There are contractors that will demand a prepayment and then they'll disappear. It happens way more often than I'd like to admit. Actually, it happened to my brother at one point with a project that he was working on, and it was so upsetting and disappointing. But at the end of the day, there is very little recourse that you can take because people literally disappear, especially on these small projects. So I understand the bank's conservative viewpoint. They're only trying to protect their investment. But on the other hand, they're almost jeopardizing their investment by not injecting the funds needed into it as promised. So it's not a dire situation because, and only because, as I mentioned in a previous episode, I, in addition to our mortgage and construction funds, applied for a loan that is low interest working capital. And that working capital is meant for, just keeping things running, keeping things moving until we get up and running in Aspinwall. And I had anticipated using most of that money for our team, like getting our team up and running before we have more revenue coming in. But in this case, it is helping a lot to have that money set aside that I can use just until the bank repays us for the money that we're paying to the contractors. Well, because it's been such a wild week, I hope you don't mind if I cut this one short. I'm on my way this afternoon to Sandy Kessler Kaminsky's art exhibition in Bakery Square. Sandy is a longtime family friend and on-again, off-again employee at the Juice Company. She's an amazing artist, really getting into public art and community murals, and we're hoping to do something really fun with her in Aspinwall, engaging the community and getting them involved in our store. It's been a pleasure, as always, and I look forward to talking with you next week. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to give us a follow at Vibrant Sunshine Behind the Scenes. You can find photos posted on my Instagram, that's Green Juice and Yoga, Naomi Hoppel, and also on the Vibrant Sunshine Cafe Instagram.